War is often told as a story of men, machines, and governments, but that version leaves out entire armies that could not speak, vote, or understand the reasons they were there. The First World War was not only a conflict of nations and industries, it was also a conflict built on the backs, hooves, wings, and instincts of millions of animals. They marched, carried, pulled, searched, warned, delivered, and died alongside human soldiers in a struggle they never chose. These animals were not merely tools of war. They were workers, companions, symbols of endurance, and reminders that humanity could not wage a global conflict without help from the natural world. The Great War shows how deeply civilization relied on creatures that had no voice in its decisions. This is the story of the Silent Regiment. At the start of the war, generals still imagined cavalry charges with bright uniforms and raised sabers. They pictured horses as they had been in past centuries: swift, heroic, unstoppable. But the world had changed faster than military imaginations. The machine gun rendered charges suicidal. Modern artillery tore ground into obstacles too deep for cavalry to cross safely. Barbed wire turned open fields into traps. Yet horses remained indispensable, not as cavalry heroes, but as laborers. Millions were used to haul heavy guns, move supply carts through mud, pull ambulances, drag water tanks, and transport ammunition to positions unreachable by motor vehicles. The war introduced machines, but the machines could not navigate every terrain. Horses could. They waded through trenches, climbed steep embankments, and endured environments trucks could not survive. They ate, slept, and suffered beside soldiers. Many froze in winter, collapsed during summer heat, and labored until their bodies broke. They endured shell fire without understanding it, bolting only when explosions came too close. Their muscles became infrastructure, their presence as important as railways and factories. Their fate revealed the contradiction of the war. Animals powered the most modern destruction. While horses carried prestige, mules and donkeys carried endurance. They were particularly valued in mountains, deserts, and muddy battlefields where horses struggled. Mules tolerated heavy weights and harsh conditions. They did not panic as easily as horses under bombardment. Their stubbornness, often joked about in peaceful times, became a form of resilience. In places like the Italian Alps, Balkan ranges, and Middle Eastern deserts, mules climbed paths too narrow even for human stretchers. They carried artillery pieces dismantled into parts. They hauled crates of water where wells were scarce. Soldiers depended on them the way cities depend on bridges. Yet mules rarely appeared in newspapers, paintings, or military songs. They lacked the romance attached to cavalry horses. They worked without recognition, just as many soldiers in supply units did. War elevated the symbolic horse and forgot the mule that kept armies alive. Donkeys, smaller and slower, also proved essential. They assisted in hauling food, medical supplies, and small equipment in villages bombed or abandoned. Their quiet strength supported civilians caught between advancing and retreating armies. They blended into the background of duty, unsung but constant. Dogs served with senses and loyalty humans could not duplicate. Their roles expanded rapidly as armies recognized their usefulness. Messenger dogs carried dispatches across fields too dangerous for humans. They ran under gunfire, navigated shattered landscapes, and reached trenches faster than runners. Messenger dogs had less hesitation, fewer fears, and a determination shaped not by orders but by training and connection to their handlers. Sentry dogs guarded camps, alerting soldiers to intruders or approaching patrols. Their barking could prevent surprise attacks. In gas warfare, some dogs sensed chemical changes in the air before humans and reacted, serving as living alarms. Rescue dogs searched for wounded soldiers among debris and craters. They located men who lay unseen under rubble, snow, or darkness. Some dogs carried maps or tagged wounded, so stretcher teams could retrieve them. Others dragged small slings of supplies to men who could not move. Dogs also served a less measurable but equally crucial role: emotional relief. Soldiers petted them, shared rations with them, slept beside them, and confided silent fear into their fur. The presence of a dog reminded soldiers that loyalty, innocence, and companionship still existed in a world where humanity seemed scarce. Dogs, more than any other animal, blurred the line between tool and friend. In a war full of telegraphs, radios, and new technologies, pigeons might have seemed relics of an older age, yet they became one of the most reliable forms of communication. Radios could be intercepted, wires could be cut, couriers could be killed. Pigeons, small and underestimated, could fly over chaos. Armies relied heavily on homing pigeons, who returned to their base even when transported far away. They carried messages too crucial to risk by any other means. The tiny metal tubes strapped to their legs held coordinates, warnings, requests for reinforcements, and pleas for medical evacuation. Some pigeons flew through artillery smoke, flames, and thick gas clouds. Many were shot by enemy forces who recognized their importance. Others returned wounded, wings broken, or chests grazed, still delivering their message. Entire units survived because a single pigeon completed a flight. These birds, associated with peace in art and religion, became instruments of survival in war. Their symbolic meaning expanded. They were no longer only symbols of peace, they became warriors for communication. Not all animals served on battlefields. Many worked behind the front, providing food and heavy labor. Cattle and pigs were raised near camps and later slaughtered to feed soldiers. Sheep provided wool for uniforms. These animals, invisible in war literature, had their lives reshaped by conflict as surely as the men in trenches. Farms shifted production from communities to armies. Animals became resources measured in calories, leather, and textiles rather than living beings. In deserts and colonial regions, camels replaced horses and trucks. They survived heat, stepped through sand without sinking, and traveled long distances without water. In Middle Eastern campaigns, armies would have starved, dehydrated, or stranded without camels. They carried artillery, food, water, and even mobile hospitals across landscapes where no other transport could endure. Oxen, slow but powerful, hauled guns through mud that swallowed horses. When roads disintegrated in rain or shellfire, Oxen pulled on where machines stalled. They moved armies at the speed of patience rather than force. These animals were the infrastructure of war, bridges with legs, wagons with hearts. Animals did not enlist. They were conscripted without understanding. They performed tasks without agreeing. They died without knowing why. This raises a moral question rarely acknowledged during the war, but deeply recognized afterward. Animals served human goals without autonomy. They bore suffering invented by people. Their loyalty was involuntary, their courage unchosen. Yet they continued to work because their instincts and training compelled them. War forced humans to confront not only how they treated each other, but how they treated those dependent on them. Some soldiers formed strong bonds with the animals under their care, grooming them, feeding them, sheltering them from cold and fear. Others treated them as expendable equipment. In many cases, animals reflected the morals of those who commanded them. Where compassion ruled, they fared better. Where urgency and indifference prevailed, they suffered more. Their fate became a mirror of human values. Animals provided something armies could not issue as rations: emotional stability. Horses listened without judgment. Dogs offered touch and warmth. Cats, present in trenches and barracks to control mice, became mascots and affectionate distractions. Even pigeons, handled daily by trainers, created routines that grounded men in responsibility free from violence. In the trenches, animals reminded soldiers that life existed beyond destruction. Caring for a horse or feeding a dog allowed men to express compassion in an environment designed to harden them. It gave them a reason to wake a little earlier, to fight to survive a little longer. Animals offered companionship where friendships were constantly shattered by death. Soldiers could not protect each other from the brutality of war, but they could protect their animals with fierce devotion. Some animals became mascots of units, appearing in photographs, drawings, and parade banners. These mascots symbolized identity, continuity, and belonging. They humanized war, even when humans struggled to remain humane. When peace finally arrived in 1918, animals faced a reality very different from soldiers. Many horses and mules were too injured to return home. Some were sold locally, where armies had campaigned. Others were euthanized to prevent disease or abandonment. Some nations tried to repatriate animals, especially celebrated horses and dogs, who had served with distinction. Pigeons were honored in ceremonies. Memorials were built. Acts of gratitude emerged. But gratitude was inconsistent. Some animals simply disappeared from record. Their service ended without fanfare. Their burial unmarked. The war changed animal roles, too. Technology expanded after the conflict. Motor vehicles replaced many animals in military supply. Radios and telephones reduced pigeon use. Yet the memory of their sacrifice did not fade completely. Soldiers remembered the animals that had shared their burden. Children grew up hearing not only stories of battles, but stories of the creatures who fought beside their parents. Animals became not just tools of war, but symbols of loyalty beyond human motive. The animals of World War I changed how militaries and civilians thought about non-human life. In the aftermath, new laws emerged to protect animals in service. Charities and societies for animal welfare gained support, fueled partly by memories of wartime suffering. Schools and commemorations began to acknowledge animals as contributors to national history. Memorials to horses and pigeons appeared in various countries. Statues featured not only men, but beasts who endured alongside them. Most importantly, animals taught the world a challenging truth. War depends not only on human decisions, but on the labor of beings who have no voice in those decisions. They remind us that conflict ripples through ecosystems and relationships far beyond the battlefield. Their memory calls for empathy, not romanticism, recognition, not exploitation. The animals who lived and died in the Great War stand as a quiet army in history. They had no uniforms, medals, or victories to celebrate. Yet they worked with strength unrecorded, loyalty unchosen, and bravery unacknowledged by strategy. They were not heroes in the human sense. They were something more humbling, beings who served because they trusted the hands that led them. Their story challenges us to ask not only how wars are fought, but who bears the weight of decisions they cannot understand. It reminds us that behind every human conflict stands a world of creatures who share its consequences. The silent regiment still marches through memory, not with fanfare, but with hoofprints, feathers, fur, and quiet footprints on soil shaped by war. They leave behind not monuments of triumph, but lessons in responsibility, compassion, and the cost of human ambition.